I'm shocked to some degree, mate, I have to admit, but I want to know how far this goes up the cookie chain, to be honest.
To the top. To the top.
I whistle blew against a deliberate, systemic, endemic and institutional child abuse that was infesting our society and causing basically all the rot. And I had a lot of children come forward to me and started talking about their involvement with this, how they're being used, how they're being pimped out, involved in prostitution. And I spoke out about this, and what happened then was I was silenced. I was aggressively and brutally silenced by a very, very senior officer. And I was threatened with the loss of my home, my children and my job if I continued to speak out, and told that I must shut that F up and never ever look into this again. I was told I didn't realise how deep I dug. And what I was on the very precipice, the very edge of a big, dark ravine of pure Satanism, and I had no idea of it, no idea what world I was going to walk into.
Much. Obviously, I wanted to speak to you because a lot of people will think you're a light, and some organisations will think you're an inconvenience, which we'll get down to the bottom of that shortly. But I just want you to explain on how this all started for yourselves. You was in the police force, is that right?
Yeah, I was in the Metropolitan Police. I retired 2017. I specialised in child abuse and vice investigations, and some people go their whole career in the police and they don't have any incident. And same with myself for many years, everything went very, very well, but there's something about child abuse. And when you start exploring the real ins and outs of it and what really are the machinations behind it and what keeps this thing sort of afloat, as it were, and uninvestigated, that's when problems start. And you'll see, I go under the banner of a whistleblower. I've given evidence at a government inquiry as a whistleblower regarding cover-ups. And the one thing with us police whistleblowers that is pretty much uniform is that when it comes to child abuse and we speak out about the deliberate cover-ups, and these are deliberate cover-ups, into child abuse, sexual exploitation, prostitution, however you want to term it, we all get attacked and bullied. And they do it all the time, and they always use the same, what I call the algorithm of bullying. They use the same pattern, and they do it because it works. And what you've got to do, you've got to dig your heels in, and you've really got to face the fire. But, you'll get hurt. Every one of us that has come to prominence for our roles in standing up and speaking out what is right, every one of us has been severely punished for doing it and damaged and hurt, and there is permanent loss as a result of it, whether it's financial, or it's your career, your reputation, or not, most of us, it's your mental health.
That's what I was going to speak to you about, because I saw, I think, your trailer on the whole thing. They came after your family, work, obviously, they come after. How far did they actually go through to getting rid of you?
Well, they tried to imprison me. How it started was the fact that I spoke out about the deliberate cover-up on more than one occasion, I must add. And it was also to do with children and sexual exploitation, children and prostitution, or paedophilia in general. Right? They don't want it coming out because it's a very well-connected environment. People going about the Freemasons, they run the world, the secret side, the police are in Freemasons, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't even waste your time with that. There's only one secret society you need to worry about, and that's the paedophiles. They are so well connected, and it's their dirty secret. And it's behind so much. And you've got to be careful, because There are a lot of conspiracy theories out there. There are a lot of very damaged people out there, you know, that have been through the system. Yeah, that have been through the system, and sometimes their judgment isn't balanced. And when you're dealing with something and you've got trauma behind you, everything can be magnified sometimes, you know. So you get triggered, and what should be straightforward isn't, you know. And there's a lot of paranoia, and there's a lot of people with very, very complex and profound mental health problems. And once you understand paedophilia and damage to children in general, you can basically understand crime, you can understand society, you can understand economics, you can understand business, you can understand religious institutions. Yet there's no emphasis ever put on solving the real rot in society, and that is child abuse. Now, the main one I spoke out about was child trafficking, child prostitution ring in central London, involving young kids from the ages of 9 up to 14 that were being taken out, being pimped out, being given drugs, and they were worked into the grave. And it'd been going on for a very, very long time. And the client list was as varied as the venues they were taken to. You know, these kids could be taken from crack houses in the morning where they were passed around for crack, and in the evenings to wealthy Mayfair restaurants and other places. And again, the clients range from crack dealers to people in the BBC, to people in the judiciary, you know, to wealthy Arab restaurant owners. And again, it's not a religious thing. And we need to change the way society. So it's a massive problem, and it's an underbelly, and it never got police attention. Those that were put in to look into it, usually on short-term leases, short-term secondments. And when you've got dedicated child abuse units, they were grossly understaffed and monumentally overworked and incredibly high stressed. You will never find an area of policing so highly stressed as child abuse. You won't. It ain't going to happen. When you get murder teams, they're very well manned up. You know, you could have a team of 10 people looking at CCTV, for example, for one murder. You know, I could be dealing with an attempted murder on child abuse, and it would just be me. And what was the difference? One died, one didn't, you know? And we had one place I worked in, we had one car between the lot of us, whereas you go onto things like anti-terrorist units, they're all given a hire car each, expenses and everything else. We got nothing. So they don't want it coming out. 80% of the prison population comes from childhood abuse backgrounds, showing that the detriment to society comes from child abuse. So I spoke out about what was happening. And what was happening was that these kids were being picked up with impunity. They'll be taken to wherever they wanted, and no one intervened. And no one was dedicated to intervene either. So the moment I spoke out and said, look, this is a major problem, the first thing what's happened was I was ridiculed. You know, I was told that the report that I put on, which was an incredibly, and to be honest, the report that I put on, which got criticised, I've got a friend in the police who's got an IQ of a genius, and he's probably the most well-read intellectual individual I've ever met. And he worded the report for me, and it's perfect. It's very, when you get intelligent people,
they don't make a mistake.
They don't make a mistake, but it's concise. So what would take me a paragraph, they do in a sentence, you know? So this phenomenal little, very to the point report went in, and then a senior officer, a detective inspector, again, this all came out in the civil case I had against the police, tried to denigrate it, saying that the standard of what diction, you know, in this report was that of a probation officer. I mean, the bloke's just an idiot. From then, it moved up to the detective chief superintendent, who then threatened me. And he turned around and said, if a word of what you say, you know, what you found goes out, you're going to lose your home, your children, and your job. You've got to shut your effing mouth. So this bloke said it with such fortitude and confidence that it made me wonder whether or not he'd done this before, or whether he was under manners to do this. And he knew that his back was covered in doing this. And that seems to have been the case, because the lengths that the police went to You know, and again, we see today in the newspapers, Sky News and BBC, how they're really digging out the chief of the Met Police, Cressida Dick, the commissioner, and rightly so. She deserves to be removed, in my opinion. She is not serving the public, and she's failed the abused children in the metropolis, 100% in my opinion. Again, very careful what I say, because these people monitor everything I do and everything I say. And I got a message from a member of parliament 2 days ago saying that the intelligence services have intercepted some of my stuff and have gone on a campaign to try and denigrate what I'm doing.
At what point did you become the criminal then? That's the question here.
Well, according to them, right from the start. But I mean, you know, in the eyes of those I serve, never. You know, but I mean, this guy threatened me. You know, okay, the loss of my job, to a point, because I'd already been warned before about child abuse and exposing it, and another inquiry into transient paedophiles, and that involved, you know, the politicians that came to notice for their links to paedophilia and, you know, and their complicity and you know, their activity in that remit. So I knew that this goes on, you know, this conspiracy of silence, because it happened before, a few years before. However, you know, the job thing, all right, my home, well, what's that got to do with them? Well, of course, as I was to find out, you know, once your job's gone, your home goes very shortly. But then why my children? What the, you know, in God's name, has that got to do with them? But this bloke, like I said, had the confidence. So I continued to speak out. And I went on again to identify many more, scores, dozens, you know, over 50 other children that were being pimped out. And it was very easy to do so. And in the end, I went to the corruption command and I made an allegation of corruption. And this is where everything changed, because now I've officially complained and made a very, very high level complaint.
Open a can of worms.
Yeah. So instead of them investigating this, you know, the serious claims I made, they then turned all their attentions on me. Now, at the same time, Jimmy Savile had been exposed for being the monumental pervert that he was. It came out that he was linked to politicians. It came out that the police, namely Surrey police, more than anyone else, had covered up allegations made to them about his paedophilic activities. So there have been failings with the police and everything else. But what it started doing was realising that there are cover-ups involving people high up, and it's in plain sight, and the police have covered it up. So with that came the whistleblower. So we started seeing Greater Manchester Police, a whistleblower, come forward from there, talking about the grooming gangs, which I never really had much to do with grooming gangs per se, but there it's a different game in the provincial north, you know, different sort of ethnic build-up and everything else. So you do get this prevalence of you know, these Muslim grooming gangs. There was also the case of Hope de la Garenne in Jersey, a kids' home where not only children were sexually abused, were raped, they also were killed. And where the police officer there spoke out publicly, and the next thing, he's destroyed. Again, this girl in Manchester destroyed. So I started getting connected with these police whistleblowers, and then I started getting politicians taking an interest in me. And what I was told by both communities, be very, very careful, because you're going into the world of intelligence services now, because it's got blackmail value, and they're going to have you. And one of the things they're going to do, they're going to start going through all your emails, and they're going to look through all your intelligence searches. So the police floats on intelligence. Years ago, it was paper. In recent years, back then, it went on to computers. So you can access intelligence. It was local, then it went national, and you could go into different systems, and you could get details of, you know, people and their criminal activities, right? But it's all audit trailed. Paperwork stuff wasn't. This stuff was. So they went back about nearly 15 years and looked at everything I'd looked at. Instead of investigating officers that are deliberately covering up little children being passed around for sex, they decided to attack me. So what I was told was data protection violation. Well, that's the first thing they did. Served me papers for data protection violation. So that was, you're now being investigated by the police internally, but also we're sending a file to the Crown Prosecution Service, right? So they didn't suspend me. They should have suspended me. They kept me on working and then said, you're being investigated. And then another one came forward. And then I was arrested for conspiracy to supply heroin, which absolute, if I ever, I'll tell you what, it's a story in its own right, but I laughed because it's total and utter nonsense. And it stemmed from an email between myself and an undercover officer. And it was nothing more than a joke. And it was, honestly, if you read it, you would laugh. It was
and they've used that to their advantage.
But not just once, they used it many times. They used it in the case against him because he ended up having issues with the police. So they brought this email up then, and then twice, in fact, and then they used it in the case against me. And
it's right to say they used the stacking method against you at some point.
Yeah, well, there was 9 offences. And I said to them, you know, if you do anything to upset the placement of my children, I said, I'll kill you. Well, the next thing, threats to kill. You know, and
there's another offence.
And this was all under the command of Cressler Dick. Now, I went to her and I told her well, just after making the allegations, that you need to know what's going on. Me and her, it was meant to be, in a meeting. And she turned around and she had 9 other women, you know, whether they're of the same milk, I don't know. Whether there's an inference there, I don't know. One of them I recognised, and I know this is an unmarried woman. So, you know, not a problem per se, but it was a massive ganging up issue, right? And I sat and thought, oh my God. And she turned around and said, look, this is a problem. We're going to back you. We're going to do this. And then she turned around, did the opposite, sanctioned the attack on me, and she actually lied. She actually went on to lie, you know, to the solicitors and everything else. So again, and then we had someone senior in the Human Resources Department who blatantly lied, and I called her out as a liar. I would be happy to name her. However, she now is a what do they call it? A trustee of the charity, and I don't want to bring any bad light on them. And I do that out of decency. She don't deserve it because she's a liar and a coward, this woman. But again, lie for what reason? Because they're frightened.
The person that'll be watching this video knows who it is. That's the important part here.
Well, of course, yeah, you know, and I just pray to God this woman realises what she's done, you know, and take stock of what she's done. But however, you know, the next thing, I go sick, and Cressler Dick said to me, if you go sick, we'll carry on paying you because this is an injury on duty. How you've been treated is appalling. So I went sick, and of course, then she stopped paying me. So I've got no money, I've got no income. I've now got this whole raft of offences against me. Each one of them could have got me 2 years in prison. The thing to do with heroin, which I'll tell you what this heroin thing for, I got threatened with 15 years in prison. And it was an undercover officer who went, had a breakdown, had a nervous breakdown, and he used to live as a tramp on the street as part of his undercover work, right? And he used to always have like a little bottle of methadone, you know, and brilliant undercover. If you met him, when they're going about, they can slip out a copper. No way, man. Some of these guys are fantastic. And he went crazy, and he left the police and he ran off to Europe and was struggling. And he basically just wanted to talk to an old face, you know. And he contacted me by email to my work. So he didn't have my number, and he said, how are you doing, my friend? I'm going to come to England. Can we meet up for a drink? And I emailed him back through my work computer. I said, you still live as a tramp? If so, you bring the method. Yeah, you bring the tenant super. I'll bring the methadone. We'll have a cocktail on a bench. That was it.
Oh, banter.
Banter, right? The police turned around to me and said that the Department of Professional Standards said, we've got evidence to get you banged up for 15 years on that. And I just laughed at them, and I told them, you know, you do your worst. You know, these are weak-minded, cowardly people. When there's people out there sticking their genitals in children, and then they're putting all their efforts into me, you know. And I'm not anti-police. There's some lovely policemen, but and women, but they need to wake up and deal with proper crime and stop picking low-hanging fruit. So I now have got no money. I'm bringing up 4 children on my own. I'm looking at losing my job at the very least, losing my home, and maybe prison. For what? Speaking out about little kids.
Standing up for the truth and your beliefs, mate. That's what.
Well, and then see, this is where it turns. It gets worse. One of my children was, I'm at a very low ebb at this stage. I'm struggling to hold it together, and I'm working cash in hand to pay the bills because I've got no income. And I come home one day, I'm working late, and I was literally getting peanuts for hard graft. I was labouring. On building sites, and I'm in my 50s, and I worked in an office in my time in the old build. Next thing, I'm grafting, but it's okay. I'm strong enough to do it, fit enough, and anyway, I do it. Come home, and there's millions of missed calls on my phone, and one of my kids is in a coma. He'd been involved in an accident. I go to hospital. He's not expected to live, and the long and short of it, he then. Cardiac arrest, and he's dead for 10 minutes. They've got a team of whatever doctors and whatnot. They've got 3 surgeons on him, and for 10 minutes they managed to revive him to the point where there's a heart murmur, but he's classed now as brain dead, and he's on a machine, and he's there for the 3 days in the end, but they gave him 5 days, and then they're going to turn it off because it's 100% life support, and they can't keep ventilating your lungs because they'll go and everything else. So he's basically written off, and the machine's going to be turned off, and I've been told, look, he's brain dead. He's been dead too long. By luck and the love of God, he woke up after 3 days, and I've been by his side. I go home after 3 days. By this time, I've got literally the fumes in my car to get me home. He's in a hospital nearly 100 miles from my home. I get home only to be met by 2 officers sent by under the command of Cressida Dick. Again, we're seeing her attacked in the news today. This woman needs to go. I can't stress that enough. Get home, and they're dispatched 2 officers from the local force, county force where I live, and they arrested me for child abandonment because I left, get this, my 15-year-old boy home alone with my 26-year-old boy.
John, without a doubt, some people will be watching this, and they'll be so pissed off within the first 4 minutes of watching this, and what's happened to you and your family and everyone else. It's unheard of. Without a doubt, it happens, and that's why this awareness needs to come out. Because if you're going through what you're going, no one will speak out, and that's where the problem is.
Well, that's right. And what they do now is they bring in these like independent liability. Whereas before it was like vicarious liability, a corporate liability. Now they put it on the individuals, and people think, well, maybe that's a good thing, but it's not. And I'll tell you for why. Because when I knew something was wrong, so I reported it, I got attacked. Right? Now, who else saw it? Well, there were other officers that saw it. Why didn't they come forward? Well, if they come forward, they're going to get attacked for not coming forward at the right time. So if they knew about it 10 years ago, they're in a world of trouble for not coming forward. And this is how you keep the silence, and you stop any other witnesses coming forward. And, I've just given evidence late last year into the government inquiry, the independent inquiry into the child abuse cover-ups. And it's just openly apparent, a catalogue of failings, and it starts with the police. I mean, a lot of the abuse starts at home, right? 8% of it starts at home. We can't take that away. The police are what they call the first responders. So there's always a problem by the time we get there. But, the police should be doing their job. They're paid to do their job. And when it comes to this, they don't. We see it all the time. When you see 10 coppers turning up because someone's not wearing a face mask in a shop or something like that. Yeah, people are ringing up, or they were ringing up in the first lockdown and complaining that their neighbours taking a dog for 2 walks. Well, where was their fortitude and their moral conscience when the little kid next door was being raped and screaming and starving and everything else?
You're 100% right, mate. And to be honest, if a lot of people watch my video, I like to use the word victimless. And I'll tell you why. The police like attending victimless crimes now. And that's parallel to what you're saying. They attend the victimless crimes while there's an actual crime with a victim taking place, and they don't attend that half of the time. And that's the problem we've faced within the last 18 months.
I mean, all it needs now, I spend a lot of my time and I go into institutions and I talk to them, right? And I do this with an ex-armed robber, and I work with very many other ex-criminals, you know. I've had no protection with it and nothing like that. I go in raw, and I've gone into rehab centres and given talks, and you find the same things. These people are there because they come from such bad damage at home, you know. And a lot of these people aren't actually anti-police. They just don't like the fact that they were abandoned when they needed help the most. Yeah, they were let down. And the system doesn't work. The prison system doesn't work. There is a need to segregate dangerous people. And I've met some very dangerous people, you know, that in their heyday, my word, you know, they'd take out 10 coppers. But when you get down to the crux of what really has motivated them, how comes a rehab centre can turn them around, yet the justice system can't? Because it goes back.
The system's not designed to help.
No, it certainly isn't. It fails 80% of the time. I give an analogy, you know, when I talk, I say, right, if I'm a builder and you want an extension, I'm going to propose you use my builder. My builder charges 450 quid an hour, which is what a solicitor charges. And I said, and bear in mind, once my builder has built your extension at 450 quid an hour, plus tea breaks and everything else, 80% of the buildings he's constructed fall down instantly. You're not going to wear it. You're going to be told, F off. That's nonsense. Yeah, that is a good analogy of our justice system. It doesn't work.
I'm going to start using that, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's the truth. You know, it really is the truth. We all want a functioning society. I mean, how much money would we save? You know, how many suicides would stop? How much overeating, anorexia, you know, drug misuse, alcohol binge drinking, you know, just bad behaviour would stop. Most of it would.
I'm shocked to some degree, mate, I have to admit, but I want to know how far this goes up the cookie chain, to be honest.
To the top. To the top. I was told by a senior officer that had exposed a care home, the cover-ups, and he's turned around to me and said, what you've got to understand, this will go right to the heart of central government and even further. I've heard the same member of the royal family mentioned on 3 occasions for abusing young boys. The same member. Again, I can't. The risk is too high. Direct victims of this individual, you know, one of the prominent members of it. And it's just disgusting. When we had Leon Britton was accused and was named in the government inquiry as being involved in instances involving young boys, he was a Home Secretary. When we had Ted Heath, who was openly accused of not just child abuse, right, but also child abuse involving Satanism, right, and he was our Prime Minister. When we got people like Sir Peter Wrighton, who Sir Peter Wrighton's best friend was the guy that was in charge of MI6, his name will come to me in a minute. Peter Wrighton wrote the thesis for how to look after a child in care. He advised the care system and social services, and he was allowed to do so by the Open University. When we've got members of the Boys Brigade high up in the military, the police, everything else, that were members of a pro-paedophile active movement called PI, what Paedophile Information Exchange. They wanted to promote sex with a young boy and a man that's been legal. They were allowed to do so and to promote their incredulous vileness by 3 members of the Labour Party, Harriet Harman, Margaret Hodge and Patricia Hewitt. Each one of them went on to become a Right Honourable, so they're members of the Privy Council appointed by the Queen, and one of them was appointed by the Labour government as Child Safeguarding Minister. I mean, it blows your mind, the depth of depravity that goes
It's just
on in
blown my
Parliament.
mind, to be honest. So we've gone from the police to our government to the royal family. You can't get bigger than that.
And what happens is that the police officers are very sycophantic. They're obsessed with licking the brown holes of rank. They're not happy unless they're calling someone sir and bowing down to them. Yes sir. No, unbelievable. A lot of them would come out of the military. Again, I never dig out the military. I think that, they're honourable guys, and I don't like digging out the police. But they've got to stop with all this brown nosing, and all they want is their pension.
Which is about to get ripped away from them, I believe.
It's gone. It's finished. And the other thing is, what I need to say to these officers is they will drop you like a ton of hot horse shite. When you're in trouble, you're gone, mate. They ain't going to stand up for you, and they will lie. They will lie, and they will lie, and they will lie. And that is a one thing with any institution, whether it be the NHS, the social services, the military, the old bill, when they're taken to court, they lie.
So in your honest opinion, the main reason coppers don't speak out is because the fear element of losing houses and families and that.
But what we've got to look at, they take an oath, right? I will act without fear or without favour, right? What is a copper's fear? What is he frightened of? He don't deserve that fear. That fear is for the reserve of that poor little child who's having that monster walk into their room at night. That's where the fear is. Do you know what? I don't want to hear a copper being frightened. Grow up. Grow up. You signed up for that, right? Put the fear to one side and deal with it later. I would not entertain the fear. And sometimes fear keeps you alive, right? There's always that adrenaline buzz, boom, 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 boom. I get that. But when it comes to doing the right thing, it ain't good enough. It just shouldn't it shouldn't even be an argument. I was frightened, I was bullied, not good enough. I won't have it. And anyone who silences themselves, due to fear, they're cowards. They are cowards.
I couldn't agree more, mate. I could not agree more. Obviously, it's hard to digest that, really, isn't it? If you put it in perspective, it's quite hard. But the other question I've got for you, which is, I don't even know where to start with it, to be honest, because if you're saying the police are like that, what are social services like, which should be helping these kids?
It's hard, right? Because I work with good coppers and I work closely with good social workers. I worked in North London boroughs, East London boroughs, West London boroughs on child abuse. I work with some good ones, right? But you see, the police, we have strong guidelines and we're always held accountable. No matter what, we're held accountable. And if we don't record something down, we're in a world of trouble. Social services had this, they were poorly trained when it comes to note keeping. And again, when it comes to experience, a lot of I work with ones that were, brought over from South Africa, from New Zealand, from Australia. They were young. They were young kids, and they're now making decisions. These are young childless people as well. So they don't understand what it's like, to be a single parent, to be in poverty. And I'm not saying they should, but they should be trained properly, and culturally they were different. And we're seeing it in the schools of a lot of teachers now. They come in, from the ex-Commonwealth countries. They're very young, and they're doing it just in order to make money and move about. And I found that they lacked life experience, and they become very judgmental as well. So one of the biggest problems, and I do this when I talk, I say, look, don't just jump to corruption, right? Usually the simplest answer is the correct one. A lot of failings are down to incompetence and laziness. And I'm going to call out the police in this one, because when I was on child abuse, there was a lot of, it sounds very insulting, but it's not. There was a lot of lactating mothers. So these were women that were returning from maternity leave and they were given jobs in child abuse, right? Now, some say, well, that was a good thing, but it's not, because firstly, once they had a kid, they just wanted to get home. And it might sound terribly sexist, but I don't care if I upset an adult. I'm not here to placate adults.
That is a fact. That's You can't run away with it. What you've just said is a fact.
Well, we look at cases where this was brought out, right, in you know, when there was a review. And we look at things like the Baby P, which I had involvement in. And we look at things like the Colombier inquiry, when, you know, the officers wouldn't go in there because the kids had scabies and they didn't want to take it home to their little prince or princess at home. A lot of these coppers, you know, the husband was a policeman, they were on dual incomes, they were, you know, on the verge of moving into the middle classes. And the last thing they wanted to do was go into a lower class person's home. You know, they wouldn't have a cup of tea in there, they wouldn't sit down, you would see them turn their nose up. So snobbery was a massive element to this, you know, huge element. And these were people culturally, they had no understanding of how the lower, not mean the working classes, there's the lower classes. And we see this in insights in programs like Jeremy Kyle, where you get this subculture and you think, my God, do these people really exist? Yeah, they do.
Hey, yeah.
They do, and there's a lot of them out there. Now, I don't care what adults do. They can screw each other, they can stick things up each other. It's not my problem. But you must leave the children alone. They must not get affected by this. You know?
Why someone will take pleasure by doing anything to a child?
Well, what we've got to look at, they're hurt people. And they get their pleasure when they're hurt. There is a need to hurt someone, right? You see it a lot with child murderers, right? What you've got to look at when there's a murder of a child and the person who's done it, look at the date. What significance has that date got, right? And if they're a narcissistic, psychopathic individual, that date will have relevance. That might be a day where they've lost a job. That might be a day where their wife has left them, where they've been sacked, where they've been this, or whatever it might be. And then, therefore, they're hurt. And these people, the only way they feel better is to hurt someone else. How many times do you see it at work when someone is deliberately a bastard to someone else, right? And they have to be horrible. They have to treat them, because this is a hurt person that can only feel good once they've caused chaos to someone else. Hurt people. Now, that's not a catch-all, because I've worked with many, many good people that have been badly damaged in their youth and their childhood, which would never hurt anyone. I'm not saying that, but as a general guide, you get that. You know, there is a need to hurt.
So there's definitely an element where things need to be categorized. So you individual that's been hurt in life and commits what he commits because of his upbringing. And there's another element with it that people actually do it just for pleasure.
Oh, they do, yeah. They do. And they have a choice. So they can hide behind whatever it wants. It was my childhood. My dad did it to me. I'm involved with Satanism and they tell me what to do. It's all bullshit. They chose to do it. We have to remember, a child has no choice. An adult has a choice, right? Adults choose to do this to children. Police officers choose to go home early and look the other way. Social services choose to do a half-baked job instead of a proper job, right? Managers choose to brush it under the carpet and to lie. Okay, you choose to do that, but at some point, this may well come back. And when it does, don't come belly aching to anyone, because you had a choice. I had a choice. And my choice was, I'm not walking home and leaving this, you know, to rest. This has to be dealt with, you know. And I knew what I was doing when I took it on. I knew that moment I did it, I was going to stick my head in a hornet's nest while someone kicked it. I knew that. But I'm glad I did it. What I didn't understand was that the sheer veracity and spite that those high up in the police sanctioned against me. And it was very organised, you know, very, very organised. So I never anti-police rant about things and all police and masons, all police are child abusers, all priests are paedophiles. That's not the case, you know. However, people need to understand that there is this subculture out there, this wheel within a wheel. And then what we now got to look at is why is it underreported? So not just those that do it, look at those that allow it to be done. Why? We can understand lower down because they may be weak-minded people or they've perverted themselves or whatever. But why up high? a government not making laws that if any officer does nothing, if any social worker walks away, that they are not badly punished. And then we see things called D-Notices, right? Now, a lot of people out there know what a D-Notice is, and it's when the press report something, they're told shut your mouth. But really, what is a D-Notice? Why D? Why not E? Why not F? Well, D stands for defence. It was brought out by Winston Churchill. Now, everyone thinks this is a good guy. Winston Churchill wasn't a good guy. He may have done some good things for the Brits during the war. I'm not taking that away from him. But as a human being, this is a very twisted man who did nothing for child welfare, absolutely nothing. Now, he brought this in, right? And it was to do with the Navy. So during the First World War, anyone who spoke out about a problem of national security, they got served with a defence notice, and hence the term loose lips sink ships, right? But if it's a defence notice, it's the reserve of the security intelligence services, right? Of which there are two operational ones that we know about, the MI5 and the MI6. They have no jurisdiction over civilian policing, right? Yet they do get involved. And why do they get involved? Why
they're involved as well.
You know, because it's got blackmail value, right? And it's got political influence. So anything involving the health and the safety of people, of animals, for example, becomes a military intelligence thing, because you could poison the water, for example, you know, and kill loads of people, you know, and things like that. They get involved there. Also, they get involved with anything that causes disruption to financial and political instability. Now, a politician, especially a Home Secretary, having sex with a young boy, you know, it's got massive blackmail value. If the Russians were to get hold of that, well, they could coerce this person into getting out details that they might know about, you know what I mean? But also, on a domestic front, if someone like the Prime Minister, like Margaret Thatcher, knew that someone like Leon Britton was having sex with young boys, well, couldn't she manipulate that man? Well, of course she could, and maybe she did, you know? And then they brought in the 100-year rule. And again, why 100 years? Well, legally, 100 years is the lifespan of a human being, all right? No one lives over 100, only the odd freak might, but, you know, on the whole, 100 years is good going, isn't it?
Yeah, you're lucky to get to 87.
Do you know what I mean? We're lucky now to get to 55, you know? People dying of diabetes and all sorts now, but, you know, and that's what they're doing. And they started serving these 100-year rules on any findings involving children's homes, you know? And then we got to look at the children's homes. What is the history of children's homes? You know, and these things came into being, you know, in the 1800s. There's records going back further. But, you know, they built these big cottage homes, they called them, and they were huge, great big acreages, like villages. And there was endemic problems of rape and prostitution around the children. And we've just seen that with the Shirley Oaks kids' homes. We saw it with the Medonsley kids' home in the northeast, the Beach home, the Beechwood. We can name them, boom, 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 rattle them off. We all knew about the Catholic institutions where they were raping the children in their care. And these are places which were paying for vulnerable kids to be looked after. They were paying good money. And there were paedophiles, known paedophiles, actively working in there. You know, there were women abusing kids. There was a lot of women sexually abusing children during the 40s, 50s and 60s. And the reason being because there was the shortage of men. And there was a lot of women that were war widows. And they were spiteful, embittered old battle axes that took a lot of pleasure in sexually abusing children. And what they found on a profile of a sex offender, that when women sexually abuse, they do it with a veracity and spite that a man can't muster, you know. And then we had this endemic of men abusing children in the 70s. And again, there was a pattern. All of this are findings that have come out in inquiries. Why were the men abusing boys, mainly boys, a lot of, and because we had the liberal laws were brought in by the Labour governments, and it was the equality laws, right? So anyone that claimed to be a homosexual, again, this isn't a homophobic rant at all, and anyone who derives and inferences that is an idiot, you know, because it's not the case. they didn't have to provide verifiable references. So they could be paedophiles. And if they were caught and this did happen, they turned around and said, you're only picking on me because I'm a homosexual. And the trade unions were backing down and there was no inquiry. You know, so that's why it went on totally unfettered, you know, with you know, unsurpassed, unchecked, you know, unmonitored, or blind eyes were taken. And some of these children, you know, they were difficult to deal with. And this is what happens with the missing persons, the missing children, right? You know, these kids would go missing from care homes, but why would they go missing? Well, no one cared. And did they do an investigation? No, because they always come back. So kids go missing, right? And there are tens of thousands go missing, and they're reported missing, right? And that comes up as a statistic, but a lot come back. Some don't. Some go missing forever. And, you know, I'm doing something at the moment involving 25 missing children, I believe, murdered. But they do come back. But no one was checking what was happening to them. So I went to one borough. I went to the London borough of Haringey. And Haringey had the largest amount of children's homes of any London borough, had 26. And I was told by a detective sergeant who was running a team on the child abuse unit for Haringey. I was said, how many children involved in prostitution do you have in the care system? And she said, oh, we just had an officer that's left, and she dealt with that for the last 2 years. That was her job, to monitor that. I said, okay, how many? None. I went, right. She said she goes to meetings. There's not one in this borough, so we're quite lucky. And I know that's a lie, right? So what I did was I said, well, do you mind if I have that role? And she went, well, if you want to. She said, actually, it's quite an easy number because you get days out to meetings and then you go straight home, right? So I can see why this woman detective chose to do that, maybe. I don't know, you know, maybe there's a correlation, I don't know. So this is what I did. I went and I got a fax through, I rang up social services, send me a fax of your children's homes, right? I've still got a copy of that fax to this day. And I gave it to the government inquiry, they got it. And it come through. And I literally picked the phone up, I rang the first one, and I said, how many kids you got? 5, right? What happens to them in the weekend? Oh, we lose 3 out of 5, 3 missing kids. What happens to them? Pimped out. Bang. Second one, they had 6, they lost 4, bang. So within 10 minutes, I found 10 kids. Within 3 days, the end of 3 days, I found 50 kids, right? So we got this one officer that was doing it for 2 years, nothing.
Blind eye, that's what she was doing, a blind eye.
Yeah, exactly, you know. And there's that saying, you know, Edmund Burke, in order for the triumph of evil, it takes but for good men to do nothing.
John,
you know,
the thing is, a lot of people will be watching this and they'll be asking the question, why would you put a blind eye, even at that level?
Well, it's quite straightforward, right? Now crime, anyone who lives in a high crime area, right? Usually what you get is violent and dishonest crime. So you'll get shoplifting, burglaries, car theft, right? And then you'll get the violence, the street robberies, people smacking each other in the gobs. When you watch TikTok, there's always a council estate in Leeds or somewhere where someone's battering someone else. You don't tend to get it, you know, in a nice leafy suburb of Berkshire, for example. So crime on that level, dishonesty and violence, tends to be the reserve of the lower and the working classes. All right. Child prostitution, and again, I get slated for saying that. I'm not really interested in the semantics of this, right? And this is something, again, which was brought up. I brought this up in a government inquiry. It's straightforward. If you don't look for it, it ain't there. If you don't want to hear about it, you ain't going to hear about it. And if no one talks about it, nothing gets said. So it's that see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. It needs a proactive approach. Child prostitution, you won't find it if you don't want to look for it. But you look for it, it will come to you. And you will be amazed at what was going on. And it's when you talk to these kids, you know, that are unruly, that are out in the street all the time. And if you ever sat down and say, actually, what's going on? They'll tell you what's happening in their lives. And usually it will be that they're being paid to go to this house and do this with this man, and he gives them a bit of crack, or he gives them a bottle of wine, or he gives them this, boom, boom, boom. But if you was to look at it, it would just be kids behaving badly, mouthing off and gobbing off. But there's always a reason for that pain, that loudness. And when the kids are loud like that, they're actually screaming, help me, help me, help me, save me, help me. But these are unsavoury kids, you know? Why would you want to do? I mean, prior to dealing with that, I was investigating casino crime. I was one of 2 officers in the world who investigate casino crime. Our work took us all around the world, right? Incredible, opulent life I had, right? I was offered a job in the casino industry, a lot of money, leave the police, we'll give you a job, right? I didn't want to. I didn't want to be sat in casinos. I used to have dinner at the Ritz. I would go into casinos like Crockford's, you know, Les Ambassadeurs and Aspinalls, these real high market things. I weren't interested. It meant nothing to me, right? And then I swapped that for a career hanging around, you know, the ghettos really of London. Not an appealing place to be, but the rewards are incredible, you know. And I do a lot now with ex-criminals. One guy I'm doing a lot with, we go and give talks together. He's an ex-armed robber. He's a very dangerous guy in his day, you know, and a very active little criminal. And, you know, I don't remember him, but I remember his little crew from the Paddington area of London when I was working in the West End, and, you know, and they were right, you know, little painless lot. And he went on from petty crime, burglary, into robbery, into full-on armed robbers, you know. But where did he come from? And he was just a classic example of what the care system spews out, you know. And it's so easily remedied and rectified. But what I say is the people change themselves, the system don't change anyone.
Oh, yeah.
This system is appalling, it's disgusting. These professionals, you know, shame on them for taking a wage and with no results, you know. It's wrong.
I couldn't agree more, John. I really couldn't more. I'm gobsmacked to some degree. The next question, which is quite important to people to actually know, in your opinion, because if you search this, it's so censored that you'd never get an accurate result. How many children, in your opinion, go missing every year?
If I was just to go on the microcosm, now, if I found in 3 days 50 kids in one small area, so if we got 50 kids, and I never really got to the end of it, but take that was for one borough. There's 20 boroughs in London, for example. There are more, I think there's a few more than that. So that's 1,000 children, right, just for London. And then if we extend that to Bristol or Manchester, you know, boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's tens of thousands of kids at any one time. And this is any one time, you know. And these are from institutions. I don't know how many go that aren't in institutions, you know, from home that go missing, that no one's monitoring. We don't know how many migrant kids we've got here. We have no clue, you know. We've got a massive migrant population. No one monitors them, where they come, where they go. So I would say in the tens of thousands, easily. Most do come back, but I will say that those that go missing are involved in criminality, and a lot of it is sexual criminality.
It's just the unspeakable, isn't it? You cannot put a single word on it because it's so wrong, it's so suppressed, it's so... Yeah. It's unbelievable. I can only take my hat off to you, mate, to be honest, on what you've done.
Well, the government needs to get involved. I mean, I was with a former chief constable today, and this is a guy who spoke out about cover-ups, and again, they attacked him. He was a chief constable, you know, and I said to him, who did it to you? And he went, the security services and members of the House of Lords. You know, what are these people doing? What are these politicians doing? And all they seem to do is come up with a remedy which involves a contract, which involves a company that either they're a shareholder for or their partner is. You know, we look at Serco, we look at Theresa May's links to Serco, and all the others. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And you know, we're not talking, you know, just a few quid. We're talking big, you know, executive wages getting dished out. You know, and it's wrong.
So this is all about money. Money that's not backed by gold,
always,
which is just printed notes That's the funny
Yeah.
thing about it. And literally, they're putting our kids through this for a worthless note.
Yeah, and it is. It's all about money. Don't ever think anyone does anything that's not for money. It all comes down to money. And it's as simple as that. Whether it's crime, whether it's the economics, the solicitors. I mean, I've got a down on solicitors. I've got a good friend who's a barrister. But on the whole, I've got a down on them. You know, the amount of money that they charge, we have to pay for justice, you know, and really, what do they do? You know, how better off are we for them? And it's all got to go through them. You know, and especially when they are defending, okay, we have to have this adversarial justice system where if someone is accused, they have the right to a free trial. I get that. But what I think is wrong when we get recidivist offenders, dangerous criminals that are known criminals, people like Sidney Cook, that are a massive danger to children, you know, and will continue to offend. And then they have all these rights given to them. It's wrong. And they do such destructive things to kids. One very prolific paedophile can produce 2,000 victims, direct and indirect, in their lifetime. So it's 2,000 shattered lives, you know. And you talk to any survivor of sexual abuse, they take that pain to their grave.
And they think COVID's bad.
Oh, man. How many deaths through suicide? How many deaths through alcoholism, through domestic violence?
Depression. That's going to be the next killer.
Depression, yeah, massively. You know, so much of it is you know, lack of interest in themselves, the self-harming, and all sorts of things. It's just appalling, and poor life choices, you know, and then having to be state dependent. I mean, you take survivors of abuse, chronic abuse, that can never, ever work for anyone because they see any sort of governance over them as abusive. You know, some of them, especially the ones that have gone through ritualistic abuse, never ever can keep a job, are medicated throughout their lives, you know, have got chronic mental health problems, and my heart goes out to them. It really does. And nothing ever breaks that circle, nothing puts them right. They are forever and ever dependent on the state for their medication, for this, for that, for housing, for everything. And that's so wrong.
Jon, without a doubt, you've probably given the most of your career, your life, and dedication in helping these children.
I'm still doing it now.
There's no doubt about it, and that's what I'm going to speak to you next. Is obviously everything's got a price. Obviously, help, especially, is something that's needed. Obviously, I've gone through your Facebook account and I've come across the Just Giving page, which I was scrolling and I stopped because that catch my eye on why someone will go out their way to close down a Just Giving page. Yeah,
see, I've raised money not just for charity but for campaigning, right? So with the campaigning comes expenses. I've ploughed tens of thousands of pounds of my own money into this. You know, everyone that's helped has given their time for free. And I raise money, and money goes to things like the LIKE community, which was a charity, which was a rehab centre for alcohol and drug addiction. I've given money to the Swinton Lot, which is a charity for children in prostitution. And both of them have been contacted by unknown individuals who are saying, you know, Jon Wedger's getting money on false purposes. He's a liar, he's a fraudster. I've had the Inland Revenue contact me saying we've had information you've been taking money for free, you know, and using it for your own things and not giving it where it should be given. I've had the police contact me, and it's constant. The main ones are people that don't like me exposing, because I'm one of the very few people who do this. I expose ritualistic abuse, namely satanic ritual abuse, SRA. Very, very few people do. There's a lot of people that talk about child abuse, but no one talks about ritualistic abuse. There's a clear define between survivors of abuse and satanic ritual abuse. And the main thing is a thing called DID, multiple personalities. When you start looking into Satanism and its prevalence in the UK and its reality, the fact that this is real, you come across another breed of pond life. Very twisted, dangerous, horrible, vexated individuals. and they do not rest until they try and take you down. There's a lady that went on to write a book about her time as a Satanist. She ended up going to God, and now she just wants to spend the rest of her days doing the right thing, and rightly so. Now, she was a street prostitute, a heroin addict, and what she used to do was she'd just go out and whore herself to make money from heroin. But she was approached one day by two men, and said, look, we'd like to take you somewhere. And they took her to a party. They gave her free heroin. They said, look, we'll keep you going with drugs and we'll even pay you. We just need you to come somewhere. And she went down to Virginia Water in Surrey. Again, Surrey is a very hot spot for satanic abuse. It crops up a lot. She goes down there. She ends up getting taken to a satanic ritual in which the first time she's there, they cut the throat of a baby, they bleed it into a chalice, and then they all drink it, including her. She drinks it. After that day, she never has to buy any more heroin. It's delivered to her. She gets it. She gets money. But her job is to procure children, street children, kids that I was dealing with just a little bit before my time on the street, you know, in the West End. But she'd be taking them to parties, you know, boom, boom, boom. And that was her job, right? And these kids were used for sex parties. They weren't used for rituals, but I have come across people that have witnessed kids that have been abducted for sex rituals, right? Which is another talk altogether. But one of her jobs within the coven, this coven she was in down in Surrey, was that she had to screw up churches and Christian groups. So her and another fella, who was her so-called boyfriend at the time, would go off to a little village church that was doing a lot for the community, you know. They would turn up, she said, her boyfriend played the guitar, and they would wear checkered shirts, look like just boring Christians, you know, your typical what someone would think a Christian would look like. And she said she would help do the fates, making the little cupcakes for the church fates, and help out when she could, so with her boyfriend. She said, but once she got established, she would try and have sex with as many of the men involved with the church as she could. She'd get pregnant if she could. She would break up marriages. If she had a child, it would be given up for a sacrifice, because they make money on that, you know, because it's a blood sacrifice, or it'd be aborted and a fetus would be used. If she had sex with someone from the church, she would make an allegation of rape against them, and she would destroy it. At the same time, her boyfriend would embezzle the money and cause the pot to be emptied, right? And when they were left unauthorized, or not unauthorized, unsupervised in the church, they would urinate and defecate on anything they could to desecrate the place. And once they'd ruined that, they'd move on. And so whenever you start doing the right thing, God's work in exposing satanic ritual abuse, you get this level of pond life that comes out from under a stone, and it starts worming its way in. So what they were doing was ringing up, sending messages to GoFundMe, saying that I was an unauthorized charity. I use the money for criminal purposes, for my own. One of them was saying I was giving some of the money to a survivor of abuse who's a campaigner, good man, and I was paying for him to live in Spain. You know, someone else was saying that I was buying vehicles with it. I'd have building work done on my house with it. All absolutely.
It's pretty much a repeat of the police yet again.
What the Satanists, when you actually meet them, they are weird. They're just despicable, vile individuals. You know, they're not a nice bunch whatsoever. Well, they won't be, because they worship the devil. But we've not just got Satanism. We've got a huge African population, you know, and a West African population. And if you go out to countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Benin, you know, there's still 20% of Benin is officially voodoo, you know. And Nigeria, you get a lot of amalgamation of the voodoo churches and the Christian churches. And they've shown that 80% of rural regions in Nigeria, they combine Christianity with voodoo. And voodoo is the same thing as Satanism. You know, people say, oh, no, it's not. It's necromancy.
So while you're on the subject of Satanism, obviously, I'm sure you're aware that a lot of people, it's been labelled as conspiracy, but obviously after speaking to you, I very doubt it very much, that these satanic rituals happen at a high, politicians, for example, will go through that, the high families will do it. Is there any truth to that?
Well, look, we've had 10 cases in the last decade that have gone to Crown Court and been proven to be satanic crimes and murders and things like that. And if you look on my YouTube channel, there's a list of them. Okay, and then we look at a thing called the RAINS lists. It's an acronym, RAINS, which is a document, right? A document of absolute credibility, done by a very, very well-esteemed doctor of psychology and psychotherapy, Dr. Joan Coleman, on where she lists people that are involved in Satanism. And there's a lot of celebrities in there. There's solicitors, there's policemen. There's one of the senior officers in the unit when I was on the vice unit. He's named on there. I mean, we get things like, you know, Bob Geldof's daughter had involvement with the satanic cult, the OTO, which you've got people like Aleister Crowley, and had a huge following. You've got Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, but it's also, yeah, it's out there. You know, it's massively out there. I mean, you've got, what's his name? Ozzy Osbourne wrote a song, Mr. Crowley. I mean, Aleister Crowley was classed as the most wicked man on earth. You know, the bloke was an out-and-out Satanism and had a huge following. So it does, and they want blood rituals, whether it's from an animal or whether it's from a human. A human has a higher resonance, and a human boy, you know, prepubescent boy, again, a much higher resonance. And it's all to do with the adrenaline. You see this term adrenochrome. You know, I wouldn't say it's like a big satanic panic, but it's a covert thing. You know, it's not going to come looking for you, this thing, but it is there. And it's always been there. This is ancient worship. This is Baal worship. This predates Christianity. Goes back a very long way. So when you get things like Santeria, voodoo, opium, witchcraft, they all worship the 9 layers of demons. It's all the same. But it is out there. And again, the devil's a liar. So if you ask someone, well, what are they going to do? They're going to lie. But there's enough out there. There's enough out there in popular culture to show that it does exist. I've spoken to enough victims and survivors of it. Again, it's a percentage of what I deal with. I never really come across it. I did come across it in the police. It did exist. It formed part of the training manual. They refer to, when you train as a child abuse investigator, you get trained in satanic crime, and they make reference to the Orkney Islands or what went on in the Orkney Islands. So they admit that it is a reality. I used to have a copy of the training manual, but I ended up giving it to a solicitor because you just wouldn't believe it went on. But it's there if you want to find it. But I wouldn't suggest anyone goes looking for it because it ain't good. You know. But again, it's a percentage of what I deal with. It is a percentage. But what I would say to anyone who has sex with a child is doing the devil's work, whether they want to label themselves a Satanist, a follower of Lucifer or not. They're doing the devil's work.
I've got a saying, John, if you're willing to take the innocence of a child, then someone should have the right to take their life. And then again, it still wouldn't be a lie. It still wouldn't be enough.
And how dare they do that to a child? How dare they? Who do they think they are? And if the system allows them to get away with it, we saw this with Lord Janner. We saw what he got away with, you know, and then claimed that he had dementia while still copping a £300 a day wage because he was a connected man. We saw it with Leon Britton. We saw it with Jimmy Savile. We can go on and on and on. Lord Mountbatten, you know, what he was involved with, you know, members of the Catholic Church. You know, there's the last cardinal is mentioned in the RAINS list. Again, the RAINS list went out. There's a lot of people still in popular culture are on that list. Not one of them has sued or taken out any sort of legal action to get that document removed. Not one person has done it.
Since we're on the old famous list, Prince Andrew, yeah. Guilty or innocent?
Well, in my opinion, guilty. I mean, look, he's been called out many, many times. You know, if anyone, it shows their contempt, right? for us as citizens of this land, right? That he could go and do that interview, you know, what an appalling load of bullshit. He's just lied his way through it, in my opinion. You know, and if these are true, and I think they are, this man's a paedophile, and I called him out a little while back. Now, there's a situation occurring now because the Americans want to subpoena him for what went on with a young girl, right, an underage young girl. But he's gone on TV and done this absolute dog shit interview saying that never happened, it's all a lie. You know, he couldn't have possibly been there, blah, 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 blah. Now he's going to have to stick to that, you know?
Yeah.
And he's been called out in the past. He was called out in the past and he's been called out now. You know, but he's not the only member of the royal family who allegations have been made to the police about. He's not.
Without a doubt. There's without a doubt that the whole family involved in it, in my eyes.
Yeah.
It's just scary time. Really, really scary time, John. I'll tell you a little story. What a lot of people don't know is that I was subject to that by my own father. And obviously, my mother brought me over to the UK, abducted me. I was here for about 3 to 4 years, and then that was going through the court system. And the justice system, despite all the evidence given to them, took me back there.
Where?
Cyprus.
Oh, right, okay.
So if you want to look at a corrupt country as well, that's probably at the top of the list. It's unbelievable. And that didn't end there. My father brought me back and he didn't want nothing to do with me. So the psychological and emotional effect afterwards is just drastic.
We hear this a lot, that the child is abused by a partner, the other partner comes to protect, and the child is given back to the abuser. If you ever follow the testimony of Samantha Baldwin, you see it there. There's another lady I spoke to the other day. The same thing happened. She took her child away from the abuser, went abroad, and then they came and got her, arrested her, and took the child back to abuse. And the whole thing, and you think, how the hell is this allowed to happen? And of course, the courts then, the family courts, it needs reviewing. You know, we need some sort of class action because they're getting away with murder in these family courts.
The thing is, John, what needs to happen then? Does the actual judge need to be there when it's actually happening for it to be actually true?
Well, this is the argument I had today. We're trying to help a family find their missing children who we believe have been killed and buried, you know. And I'm talking to a senior officer in a northern police force. And he was going, where's your evidence? And I provided some new evidence of a witness that saw something. He said, but it's not evidence of sexual abuse. I said, you tell me, in the history of investigating sexual abuse, when was there ever any more than 2 witnesses? One is the one doing it, and the other one is the one getting it done to them. I said, this isn't like violent crime, where it's done outside a chip shop with CCTV or on the top deck of a bus. This is done in private, right, with only 2 people. And I said, why am I having this conversation with the senior officer? This is madness, you know? And, you know, what are their expectations? And this is just crazy. You never, ever have the evidence other than the testimony. This is, and see, and what we ended up getting was that people that went through, especially with the homes, they were abused terribly in the care homes. They left and they ended up homeless, and they ended up on the street, and then they would get involved in crime. And when they got involved in crime, they would start stealing, shoplifting. Women would go to prostitution, men would go to shoplifting. When inevitably you're going to get caught, even if it's 1% of what you do, you're going to get caught, you're going to get done for shoplifting, right? That is a crime of dishonesty as of the 2003 Criminal Justice Act. So when they had this surge of people coming forward saying, I was abused in this home, and they were accused of being carpetbaggers, they were accused of just doing it for the money. Well, there ain't enough money in the world that would ever put right what was done as a victim, you know, as you know. And what an insult, anyway, to someone's integrity to say that. And the first thing they were saying, and we saw this with Jana, you know, with him as a lord, and his victims were coming forward and saying, well, they're junkies, they've got convictions for stealing, they're liars, they're dishonest people. And the law allowed that. Before it didn't, 2003 changed, and then it did. So then it allowed the abusers then to start suing those that were their victims. And we're seeing that a lot now. I mean, it's disgusting. It's appalling. And to see a kid, you know, and I can only imagine what you went through. And, you know, and I speak to so many people who've been through the same situation and a feeling of abject hopelessness, especially for your mother, what your mother must have felt as well, you know, knowing that was going to go on.
It's been a subject that's been on the hidden. I don't like talking about it. I don't like coming about it. It's something.
I can imagine.
The whole reason I wanted to start with you and get you on my page is because I want to start opening up that element, because at the end of the day, it needs to be made aware. 100%. It can't be censored anymore. It needs to come out.
And in order for healing to begin, you've got to expose this to the light, and there has to be justice. You know, there is nothing more healing than a sense of justice. You know, how much people have felt when they turned on the telly and they saw Jimmy Savile getting a knighthood, getting this, being on TV, being hugged by other celebrities, being on what's that, This Is Your Life, and everyone telling him what a good man he is when he's been raping them. They must have been...
Is that, in your opinion, one of the biggest stories of our generation? The biggest cover-up?
Yeah, I think the thing with Jimmy Savile, this is a very evil, dark man, but in many ways, he inadvertently did God's work, because it showed to the sheer extent that there would be a national cognitive dissonance. People would totally shut their minds off to this, right? And how many people were complicit? How many people turned a blind eye? I mean, how dare Esther Ransom sit there and cry? We don't want to see her fecking tears, you know?
That's the best word I like using these days, John, is a cognitive dissonance. And unfortunately, 98% of this world suffer from it.
Yeah, they do. And it's a thing. So Jimmy Savile was a turning point. You know, we got to use it in our favour. You know, we were given little gifts. Savile was a big gift, right? Another gift was Epstein. And I said, pick that ball up.
That's all coming out today on what's going on.
You know, so like I said earlier on, don't just look at those doing it. Look at those that are covering it up. Watch those that cover it up. Those that go out of their way to stand up for paedophiles. Watch who they are, because they're there. We see it all the time, especially, I mean, for me, I don't see how anyone can watch a Hollywood film and idolise any actor. I can't see how anyone can follow anyone in popular music and think they're good.
I'll tell you what, Don, David Icke says about the old spider web. It's true. Spider web. And to be honest, the more I hear you, the more I kind of imagine that web and what's actually going on.
It's evil. It's pure evil. And then you get those that actively do evil, which are the Satanists. But, you know, these other lot, they're just as bad. And if people shut their minds to it, do you know, screw them. Because they're not...
Kelly. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I know. But again, who would... I mean, there's one person I can't name for legal reasons, but this is a household name in comedy. You know, this comedy is like, for the working classes, the best comedy. And that guy, that main actor on that main comedian on that, man, a pedo, you know? And people knew. They only get to where they get because they sell themselves. They sell their soul and they sell other parts of their body, and they're dirty. That's how they get there. We should never be looking at these people as shining lights, never. Anything that's in the entertainment industry, they are not clean. Stay away from them. There's plenty of better people out there, good people, you know.
And that's becoming more and more evident as the months go by. Unbelievable. The one thing I've been campaigning about lately, and I'm getting a little bit of stick on both ends, is check your child's phone. That is huge to me.
What is it?
Checking your child's phone to some degree.
Oh yeah, right, go on.
Because not long ago, my daughter got a text from some child to go meet him in New Haven Cliffs. I mean, I should have gone, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it does happen.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and also, you look, you know, years ago when you're growing up, someone might find a porno mag under a hedge, which was usually worse for wear. You look at now what kids have access to: hardcore pornography, group sex, you know, triple anal, you know, gangbanging. Kids watching this, 9-year-olds, younger than that, watching this. what is that doing to their minds? It's single-handedly, pornography will cause such a decline in our society, you know, shocking. And what has been done about it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know, we need to go. I mean, I call out, I was a single parent, and I call out, I'm anti-single parent, anti it. And I say, men, stop leaving your children. Stop doing it. You know, if your marriage is failing, work at it. Try, have children in marriage. They're the most precious thing you'll ever get in life. Everything else is nothing. You know, look after them and look after other people's children as well. Keep your eye out for them. See what's happening. Engage with them. Find out what's going on. You know, and that's the only way we do this. Bring back a sense of community, a sense of decency. You know, stop being dysfunctional. And it's all down to us as individuals, you know. I did my bit. I continue to do my bit. I spend my day to day doing something. Again, I don't put out anything I do anymore. I shut down. I've got my Facebook still, but I don't post anything, and I haven't done since October last year. Nothing. I'm doing more work now covertly than I ever have done. I do a lot of work with the ex-servicemen. And this is another way. If we're fed up of this, there's enough. Ex-servicemen, ex-fire brigade, ex-old bill, black cab drivers, you know, all these institutions that have got this air of decency about. Why don't we all get together and make the government listen to us? Make them listen to us, you know, and say we're not having this anymore. This has to stop, you know, and has to stop now. And any politician that is caught doing anything, they go. And our kids should start taking an interest in politics because it's their world. You know, stop giving it to these old Etonians, these dysfunctional, messed up old Etonians to do what they want with our country.
Satanic human beings.
Well, if you take a young boy, there's a book called The Poisoned Bowl. It's an interesting read. And it looks at what we call the public school system, whichever else is a private school system. And it's down to the Public Schools Act, you know, but Eton and schools like that, Winchester. And they're mentioned a lot. You know, these schools are based on the Greco-Roman gladiatorial schools. They're putting in there these young boys, taking them away from their mums where their parents willingly give them over, into a world of beatings and buggery. Now, caning's outlawed, but, you know, it was still going on not so long back in the public schools. So if you get a young 5-year-old boy and you cane his bare buttocks for no other reason than you can, an older boy doing it, you know, and then they have sexual access to that young boy. And then when he becomes a pubescent teenager and he's highly sexualized, homosexually highly sexualized, right? What's he going to do? He's just going to do the same, right? And then from there, they go on to these prep schools like Eton, where it continues, right? The beatings and the buggery. And then they go on to either into the city or into Sandhurst and then into politics, like we get with Boris Johnson, David Cameron, Tony Blair. We can rattle them all off. What sort of individuals you're going to get? They're going to be balanced? I don't think so. These are going to be very, 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 very twisted, distorted individuals. Are they going to have any interest in combating child abuse? I very much doubt it. Very much doubt it. You know, and these are the people that are governing us. They're not match fit. You know, we have to take an interest in politics and turn this whole thing round and stop it. Stop it now, you know, and the courts, you know, and these corrupt judges. There's a guy who gives a brilliant testimony. His name's Darren Jeffries. And he went through probably one of the worst testimonials I've ever come across of sexual abuse. He was raped by an art teacher, and his reward for that was, as a result, he bunked school a few times, and the probation service stuck him in a kids' home. The probation officer who put him in a kids' home was another one that was raping him. He goes into a kids' home where he was raped constantly, beaten, stripped naked, and all sorts of bad stuff went on. One of the people doing it to him was a Crown Court judge who he ended up being, you know, presiding over one of his cases. You know, this is a calibre of scrum that we have that are governing our society. And what happens to them? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know, I'm amazed at Lord Jenner how he got away with it. How he got away, what he got away with. and it's just appalling. And of course, who comes to their aid? You know, the national papers attack the victims. You know, we see that quite a lot. The victims, when they come forward, get attacked, and some of them get prison sentences. I mean, whatever your opinion on Cole Beach, this guy that they referred to as Nick, who spoke out about, you know, the child abuse, he was classed as a fantasist. He ended up getting 19 years in prison. 19 years. What was his crime? If there was one, speaking out. Was he a victim? I genuinely believe he was a victim. He may be a man who's a bit screwed up in the head, but 19 years. You know, we had another lady called Sabine McNeil who exposed, you know, this child abuse satanic ring that was in Hampstead in London. And she again got 8 years for perverting cause of justice. So they come down hard. They come down very, very hard on you. And maybe they take it a step further. Maybe, you know, the intelligence services will take you out if you cross over the line. I mean, I've had threats like that myself, you know.
So, John, there's no simple way of putting it. There is a suppression. There is a censorship around this. Doesn't want to be talked about. And the cult, let's call them, will go out their ways to make this disappear like it never happened. But the reality is, it does happen.
Well, it does happen. I mean, you know, look what we've discussed with your personal experiences, and what you'll find is people will come to you now and they will talk to you now. They will. And they are so glad you said that. They will be, thank God, honestly, it will be music to their ears you said that. You know, because it's a difficult one. It's
it is a very difficult one, and I've said many times, if I had it my way, I'll burn this world to the ground and rebuild it. But there's good people in this world.
There's some brilliant people. I mean, I work with a fantastic guy who was in the care system as a kid, had a horrific, you know, young life, the most compassionate warrior of a man I'll ever meet, and it's a privilege to be his friend, you know, and we go and we do so much work together, you know, and you can turn it into good, and there's people that need our help.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%, John.
We're in a period of time where we're all being brought together, we're getting the word out there, and you know, we're not here for these evil ones. They're screwed. We just got to just don't back down. Do the right thing. Think about everything you do. Use your intelligence. God gave you intelligence, but he also gave you a backbone, you know?
I'll tell you what, I was having a little conversation with someone today, and I was saying, we're an inconvenience to these people. We really are an inconvenience, and to some degree, I love that, because I'm going to become an inconvenience to you.
Well, someone said to me once, you ain't going to stop it. I said, listen, if I die tomorrow and all I've been is a stone in their shoe, a breadcrumb in their bed, a little mosquito bite on their neck, I've done a good job.
100%.
I've done it. I'm happy. And if I upset a Satanist, again, brilliant. Good. I'm glad I've upset a Satanist, you know, and that's how I see it now. And if I am a pain in the arse to certain people high up in the police, good, do the right thing, and let's protect our children, because they ain't got a choice, and we have.
100%. 100%. Lastly, before I let you go, because I know you're a busy man, obviously you haven't been posting on Facebook. It's evident that you haven't. So people are going to be watching this and saying what an amazing person you are. What are you doing these days?
I'm doing a lot with ex-servicemen. I'm helping ex-criminals. I'm going into institutions, doing talks. I'm doing a lot of practical work to get people into work. We're doing a thing where we're getting people into filmmaking, where they're going out giving their testimonies for a documentary. So if anyone has got quite a powerful story, they can get in touch with me through the Jon Wedger Foundation at gmail.com. And then I'm doing this thing at the moment where we're trying to track down quite a lot of missing children, which are presumed dead. The presumption is
like my mate over there, Angels in the Shadow. He's got his own firm that goes into terrorism organisations and gets kids back. There are heroes out there.
I'm working with a couple of ex-military guys. You know, I mean, top tier military guys have done exactly the same. you know, but they've
Well,
done
he's
it
a military guy, and it just goes to show what have you actually saw in life to actually go and open your own firm and actually go out and get these kids. And these are the stories that are not coming out.
No, that's right. And, you know, and they've had enough of this government as well. They've had enough of it. You know, they've had enough of being used and treated like shite. Because when the military's finished with them, they just get rid of them anyway, as they always have done. And they're just saying, no, this is wrong. You know, they come to me, they said, look, we've done a lot of work abroad. And then one day we watched your video and realised, flipping hell, we didn't realise this went on in the UK. What do you want? What do you want from us? You know, so I met them at a secure location, these guys, and I said, actually, this bit of work's just come in. This family is screaming out for help to find their children. And the next day, they turned up at the meeting and they brought top-notch equipment. They brought a professional with them, with ground-penetrating radar and all sorts, you know. And we've just gone to work, and it's paying off. It's paying off, you know.
I'm going to start calling you the human taken at some point, I tell you.
Honestly, and we've got a couple of real good, tough guys with us as well. You know, we've got a nice, good look security firm with us as well. Everyone does it for free. I mean, if I wanted to, I could raise a lot of money, but I keep my head down now. If they want to donate, they can donate. It's up to them.
So where do people donate these days, John?
Well, all they do is just send me an email, and then I can forward details through. You know. And, you know, Jon, Jon Wedger, Wedger Foundation @gmail.com. And then from there, I can pass details on when I can. You know, I won't be giving out audit lists and all that because I can't do that. But what I will say, it goes to a very, very, very worthy thing. And a lot of it is travel expenses. You know, at the moment, every one of us is doing it for free, you know, but we're moving forward. You know, we had a meeting with a politician. We've just met with a chief constable. We've got another meeting with the police next week. You know, a share of information, and we're gleaning some good info, and we're getting a lot of ex-coppers coming our way as well. You know, but we're after just very experienced people at the moment. But I have opened my doors too wide before, and I've had people come in that have just destroyed everything. I've had people steal money off me, just disrupt everything. So, you know, I'm very, very choosy now. You know, there has to be a bit of a proven track record behind them at the moment, you know.
That's unbelievable, John, to be honest, because someone in your caliber's essentially lost everything in life, well, besides your kids, for a greater cause. And society's moving against you to some degree. You could say you're the angels in the shadows, to be honest, mate.
I mean, there's some brilliant people out there. There's some good people, but there's some dark, twisted people. You just got to have good discernment. And just remember, you know, God does it because he loves you. You know, the devil does it because he hates you, and he'll always try and divide and subtract. And they cause chaos. These people always cause chaos, you know. But good people don't. They always bring something to the table and they crack on. I mean, I've been working now with a very infamous ex-gangster for the last 4 years, an ex-member of the Quaterings firm, you know, blokes I've ever met. I mean, that was just Netflix ringing up, funny enough. So, you know, we're doing bits with them at the moment as well. But, yeah, and I'm trying to get as many people that have had really traumatic lives to give their testimonies, so we can tell the world what went on. I don't need to do it. The world knows who I am and what I've done. I want their testimonies on there because the world needs to wake up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it gives hope as well. It gives hope when they've seen someone that's gone on to live a balanced life and bring up a family and do the right thing. It gives them hope. You know, because at the moment now, the system just takes hope away. You know, and sometimes hope's all you've got left, you know. And I say to people, don't ever give up. You're not alone. If it happened to you, it happened to a million others. You're not alone. And the ones who are in the wrong, the ones who've got the shame is them, not you. You never had a choice, they did. You know, and if anyone is in desperate need, you know, get in touch with me. I can't promise anything, but I do know professionals that might be able to help. Even if it's with a legal issue, a housing issue or something like that. You know, I do know, I still am connected to people on that front. So, but I can't guarantee anything, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, John, honestly, it's been amazing speaking to you. I hope people at the end look at this video and go, I've definitely got to jump on board with this.
Yeah. And I say, look, we're in changing times now. We need to show solidarity. No, infighting is the worst thing. And with all these groups, there's always infighting. You don't need to be part of a group. You need to be a link in a chain. And you come together and then you break and do your own thing. With groups, especially when there's a lot of trauma, bonding, if something kicks off, it all goes wrong. And a lot of these survivor groups do tend to break up because of the trauma bonding, you know. Be a link in the chain. Come together, and we should show solidarity, you know. We should be taken to the streets and we should be making these politicians accountable.
100%.
You know, for the child abuse, for the family courts and everything. And so it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for sharing, you know, your testimony with me. And I guarantee you, people will come to you. That's how it works.
No, thank you, John. Thank you.
And God bless you.
God bless you.